As we walked across the frozen lake, we could hear cracking somewhere deep beneath our feet. "You sure this is safe?" I asked Dylan. "Yeah, man." He said the ice just makes that sound. You could drive a car over this part of the lake. Closer to the glacier, though. That's where it gets dicey. Right, I said. Though it didn't make me feel much better. Dylan had just moved to Alaska and kept telling me I needed to visit him. But in the same breath, he'd say stuff like, "It sleets every day and the sun sets at 3:30 today. And there's an avalanche warning today." These weren't convincing sales pitches for getting me to come up from San Diego for a visit. But January rolled around, and I didn't have that much to do, so I booked a flight up there to see what a real Alaska winter is like. I was surprised that it wasn't that cold. It was cloudy, sure. The sun set early, sure. But I was pleasantly surprised at the nightlife and the friends he'd made. They weren't all lumberjack types like I had expected. They kept telling us that we needed to go check on the ice caves under the glacier. Dylan said he had it all planned out, that he had talked to people, and he knew right where they were. Apparently every winter, as the glacier moves, these caves form in the glacier that you can walk into. I didn't really understand it, but Dylan had really talked them up. And hell, when in Alaska, right? The ice near the glacier is thinner because the glacier is always moving. Dylan said it's a moving river of ice. Yeah, like, you've said that 5 times already, Dylan. I was trying not to roll my eyes. Sorry, Dylan said, just excited for my guy to be in a new place. About that, I said, as we passed another family coming back from the glacier. "How long do you think we'll be up here? Is this just a couple years to scratch some itch, or?" I trailed off as I looked over at him. He grimaced, either from the cold wind coming off the glacier, or from the awkwardness of the question. "I've only been here for a few months, Quinn." He said, "It's kind of hard to tell. But I don't have that much tying me back home, other than you and my mom. Not that those aren't important things, but I mean, you know, I really like it here so far. And they say if you like it in the dark, cold winter, you could probably last here long term." "Cool," I said, not wanting to show my disappointment. I was just curious. I looked up at the glacier ahead. It really did look like a river frozen in time. It swept down from between 2 sharp peaks, reaching out for this frozen lake. Like it didn't have enough water stored up in its age-old mass and was scooping up more from this valley. "You know, I read something crazy recently," I said, looking to break the tension between me and Dylan. "Apparently a lot of these glaciers are retreating so much that they're uncovering land that's been trapped under the glacier for thousands of years. Like air hasn't touched these places in millennia." "Dude, I know." "Isn't that wild?" Dylan said. "I saw this thing about receding glaciers, uncovering bodies of people who died hundreds of years ago." "Damn," I said, looking at the river of ice between us. "So is this one receding?" "Yeah." "Oh yeah, big time," Dylan said. "It advances in the winter, but falls back more and more each summer. Like, you know, 1 step forward in the winter, and then 3 steps back in the summer." "You think we'll see any dead bodies under there?" I asked Dylan. Dylan punched my puffy coat sleeve and smiled. "Well, with our luck, we'll probably see some petrified caveman turd." Dylan said. We both laughed, releasing clouds of vapor that drifted around our heads like smoke from 2 candles. As we got closer to the glacier, I couldn't believe how vast this thing was. I mean, you hear so much about them shrinking that you forget that they're pretty damn huge. They're just smaller than they used to be. Most of the glacier was covered with snow and dirt. But the face of the glacier, which loomed above us like a mountain range of its own, was the most crisp and beautiful blue I'd ever seen. I know that all water has been around for generations, and that it's all recycled. But to me, It looked like this ice was reborn in this glacier. It's absolutely amazing. I sat in awe. Just wait until we get under it, Dylan replied. Or at least that's what I've been told. Dylan pointed to a trail of footprints in the snow. This is probably the way, he said. We crunched through the snow around the left side of the glacier. Looking back on it now, I suppose it was odd how few people were out there. That morning, it was a clear, beautiful day in a town that apparently didn't get a lot of clear, beautiful days. And at the time, though, I didn't think anything of it. We walked past the face of the glacier, past daunting towers of ice that looked down on us. Like blue giants, the beaten path through the snow became narrower and narrower. See, I think we're on the shore Dylan now. Said I could feel the rocks beneath us. Watch your step. We walked up a hill and back down, dodging sharp rocks sticking through the snow. The path wound away from the glacier and then back toward it after a few minutes. Dylan pointed a gloved hand ahead. I followed his finger and saw a tiny opening in the side of the glacier. It was a dark puncture in the wall of blue and white, like something an animal had burrowed. It looked barely big enough for a child. "We're going through that?" I asked him. Dylan smirked at me and nodded. "Trust me, bro," was all he said. Even close up, the opening still looked too small, and it only got worse. Not only was this entrance tiny, but it LED'd downward. A narrow path slid down into the glacier, like a slide at a water park that leads into darkness. It looked like a gateway to another dimension, walled by ice with huge dimples in it. A spike of ice hung from the top of the tunnel like a sapphire in a mouth that was ready to swallow us. "I'll go first," Dylan said. "It's gonna be fine." "You think we could get back up this way?" I asked. "Well, that's why I had you bring your ice boots." Dylan said I hadn't told him that. My boots actually weren't mine at all. They belonged to a friend who was a full size bigger than me. I felt like I was walking around in scuba diving, flippers and those things. "Of course, we could climb back up," Dylan was saying. "It's not that steep. You can see all these footprints all over the place. People have been going up and down this path all week." I bet. I looked down, and I saw a lot of footprints. But how did we know these people walked both in and out of the ice cave? Now, before I could manage a retort, Dylan sat down and began his slide into the blue unknown. He had to power himself down the tunnel. So it's not like he was flying down this path like a grease slide or anything like that. But it made me feel a little bit better that we could get back up this way. I sat down and followed him. Scooting my way down the ice became darker as we slid deeper into the glacier, like the smooth, dark blue of a whale. I saw a light ahead of us, and Dylan said he could see the cave opening up. I scooted a little faster and was right behind Dylan. By the time he got to the cave, it was a massive space and much more brightly lit than the tunnel we just been in. The ice glowed a magnificent blue thanks to the sunlight beaming through it, and I instantly started to feel better, especially when I saw a few other people down there taking pictures and touching the ice and marveling just like Dylan and I were. "Isn't this amazing?" Dylan said as he put a hand on my shoulder. His eyes glowed as brilliantly as the ice above us. "This is what I wanted you to see, man. This is incredible," I said. At that moment, I thought about whether I'd ever seen anything so incredible, and for some odd reason, the first thing I thought of was the Blue Angels plane show I'd seen as a kid. On the 4th of July, I started laughing at the ridiculousness of comparing these two things. Dylan beamed and nodded his head. "There's my Quinn," he said. Not the little nervous man I saw outside a minute ago. "Hey man, this might be normal to you, Alaska woodsman, but the idea of this was really intimidating to me." I said, "But damn, I'm starting to get why you're so into this place." We walked around for a few minutes. The other group of people asked us to take a picture of them, and we asked them to take a picture of us. We touched the ice, which was surprisingly dry and almost sticky. Particles of dirt and rock were stuck in the ice, silhouetted in the sunlight like black stars against a clear blue sky. The other group of people climbed back up the cave the way we came in, and when they didn't slide right back down, I felt even better about this little adventure. We went deeper into the cave, eventually losing sight of the entrance. We got to a little area that was perfectly round, like it had been carved out just for us. You know, this is probably the coolest thing I've ever done. I told Dylan thanks. He let out a smirk and winked at me, but then we heard the cracking. At least that's what it sounded like at first. It was kind of like the sounds we'd hear under us as we crossed the frozen lake, the ones Dylan told me not to worry about. It sounded like it was coming from all around us. Now, it started out low, but then it got louder. Dylan's eyes widened, and he crouched and looked around like a threatened animal. "Dude," I said. "Dude, what the hell was that?" He shook his head. "We should probably get out of here," he replied. He bolted for that exit as quickly as he could, and I followed him. We dodged around huge columns of ice and ducked under low ceilings. That cracking grew louder and louder, echoing all around us. Dylan stopped in his tracks. "Oh no," he breathed. I thought this was the way out. But I caught up with him and saw the path ahead of us descended even deeper into the glacier. We definitely had not come from that way. That tunnel was dark, much darker than any place we'd seen yet. The walls looked like polished ebony, glimmering in the dim light, and there was just enough light to see the walls, and just enough light to see the thing that was moving towards us. It took up the whole tunnel, which was probably 6 feet high and just as wide. It looked hairy with a head that bobbed ahead of it, like it was on all fours. It was growling. That's what the sound was. You see, it wasn't the ice like creaking we had originally thought. This thing was growling at us. This glacier had uncovered something, and it was much more worse than millennia-old corpses. Or caveman shits. I grabbed Dylan's arm, and I pulled him backwards. I mean, we had to get the hell out of there. We stumbled, and we slipped our way back the way we came, looking around for a familiar way back. But that creature's growling mixed with our panic, breathing, the sound, swirling around us like a sonic cloud. Dylan finally spotted our way back and dragged me along with him, and things were finally starting to look familiar. I saw the rock that we posed on earlier, and the huge column of ice in the middle of the cave that looked like a blue tornado. And there on the far end of the cave was our exit. I leaned forward, looking to run just a little bit faster. And that's when my foot slipped into the 2 big pair of boots I was wearing. I lost my balance, and I went sprawling on the hard floor of the cave. And as I rolled over to stand up, I saw the thing that was chasing us. It was a wolf-like creature, limping forward on 4 legs that I'm guessing had long been frozen. A long, long time. It had patches of hair all over it, but most of it was the slick skin of an amphibian. Its eyes were either blue or black. It was hard to tell in the blue light of the glacier cave. It slowed down for a moment and looked down at me. When I fell, it was probably 30 feet behind me. It shook itself like a dog, flinging mud and chunks of ice around the cave. Then it bared its teeth. 2 huge incisors stood out among a line of sharp teeth. Bits of glacial ice glinted in its mouth. Dylan grabbed my shoulder and yanked me up. "Come on," he yelled as he helped me scramble to my feet. And we took off running again, and I heard the beast behind us start galloping too. We veered toward the dark space in the wall that we knew LED to the outside world, and the ground beneath us trembled as the monster got closer. And I thought I could hear the glacier creaking around us as well. Hell, at that point, right then, I half expected the whole thing to come crumbling down on top of us. It was so loud in there, between the growling of this beast, the cracking of the ice, and our labored breathing and screaming hell. I'm sure my blood was rushing through my ears too. All I remember was feeling like the world was exploding around me. We made it over to the tunnel, out from under the glacier, and I shoved Dylan in first. He didn't have time to protest. I looked back and I saw the barrel into the huge column of ice cracks. Spider webbed up the column, which still looked to me like a tornado. Then the cracks spread through the ceiling like lightning slicing across the sky. Those cracks chased us, joining the monster in the hunt. I ducked and started crawling up the path. Then I climbed through the dark blue of that tunnel, like I was swimming through the cold ocean. Almost there, Dylan gasped ahead of me, and the sound of ice cracking sounded like fireworks all around my head. I screamed as I scrambled for my life up that tunnel. And then suddenly I was out. Now, I think Dylan dragged me the last few feet. I don't remember exactly. Now, I do remember that huge piece of ice, the one to me that looked like a huge sapphire earlier, swinging like a pendulum of a grandfather clock as the tunnel started to collapse. From my spot just outside the tunnel, I watched it crumble. The sound was deafening for a moment, and then we heard it echo off the mountains that surrounded us. But there were only a few moments of silence before we heard a familiar sound from the collapsed tunnel. The growling. Dylan and I clambered to our feet and took off in the direction we came from. He was still ahead of me, and I watched as he slipped and smacked his face on one of the sharp rocks, jutting from the snow, and I swear I heard it rip through his skin. He cried out and slapped a hand to his face. Blood gushed between his fingers of his glove. I caught up to him and pulled him up. "We have got to go," I told him as I looked back and saw the collapsed ice of the glacier moving. It was like the glacier really was becoming a river. Before our eyes, I finally got Dylan up and started walking him back toward the frozen lake. Blood dotted the snow behind us like scarlet breadcrumbs for the ancient monster to follow. We didn't have another option, though. You see, Dylan's face at that point was bleeding like crazy. But it's not like we could have stopped. So we obviously kept moving a trail behind us. Or not, anyway. I was starting to think of a plan right then, before we made it back to the lake. The beast emerged from the collapsed pile of ice. It roared, sending its aeons-old fury echoing off the mountains. And I tried to get Dylan to move faster, but he was stumbling so that I could barely even keep him upright. We were only 100 feet or so from the lake, and I knew what to do when we got there. That is, if we got there. Because I heard that galloping behind us. It huffed and it puffed as it sped along the bloody path, straight to us. We turned left toward the lake, and I was able to steal another glance at the creature. It was more green than I realized. It glimmered in the sunlight, like it was carved from a freshly polished emerald. Its patchy fur was black and long, flailing in the air, like the beast had packs of leeches attached to various parts of its skin. Its lathering jaws hung open as it panted, revealing those sharp teeth and a dark green tongue. I felt the ground change beneath my boots. I looked back, and we were on the frozen lake. Dylan tried to pull me away from the glacier, but I pulled him back toward it. "Thin ice," he yelled. "I know," I said. I walked as close to the glacier as I felt I safely could. I thought about what it would feel like to crash through the ice into the frigid water below. I thought about these two big, stupid boots filling up with water and dragging me down to my death. But I tried to push those thoughts away. The ice trembled beneath us, and I could feel it preparing to give way. I knew that meant that the beast was on the ice behind us, had stepped right into my trap. I just hoped that we didn't get taken down with it. I could tell Dylan understood my plan. He ran confidently forward, along with me staying close to the glacier, even though he knew the risks. The huge towers of ice next to us shook like skyscrapers in an earthquake. And I thought about the ice breaking beneath us, but hadn't thought about one of those huge pieces cracking off and falling on us. I didn't know which would give in to the creature's weight first, the glacier or the lake's ice. The glacier outlasted the lake ice. It won the race, and thankfully so did we. The world around us shook as the ice gave way. I tripped and fell again, taking Dylan down with me. We slid forward on the shaking ice, and I spun to look back. The ancient creature flailed in the air, fear and rage radiating from its black eyes. Its great jaws snapped in the air in a final, furious gnashing. It dropped into the ice with a huge splash, sending frigid water airborne. The water went as high as the glacier's towers, and then crashed back down. Dylan grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back up. I stumbled to my feet and we ran as fast as we could, away from the cracking ice and the trembling face of the glacier. I heard more cracking and splashing behind us, but didn't look back until we were a safe distance away from the glacier. There was a fresh slash in the face of the glacier right over where we had ended up. A chunk had broken off and crashed through the ice. The new gash looked like a glaring blue eye. Dylan and I wheezed, sending clouds of vapor into the air around us as we bent with our hands on our knees. "What the hell was that?" Dylan asked. I shook my head well. "Hell, you tell Alaska me, boy." Something that the ice was hiding. The wound on the side of Dylan's face kept dripping blood into the icy surface of the frozen lake. And now that I could get a good look at it, I was a little less worried. It wasn't a very long cut, and it didn't look that deep. I mean, facial wounds just bleed a lot, even in the cold. That was the worst thing that happened to us from that whole ordeal, at least physically. We were lucky now. Dylan later told me that nobody ever found the creature's body, even in the spring after the ice had broken up. Once we had caught our breath, we walked back across the lake to Dylan's car. I could feel the angry eye of the glacier staring at us, and I could hear that same cracking deep below us that I heard on the way out of the glacier. I wonder if that was the ice, or if something was growling at us from the darkness below the ice.